Hello, I'm Papa Ponderosa. Welcome to Project Holmstock, a Cities Skylines collaborative series by the Detailers Collective. In this video, I'll go over a bit of the origin of this project and provide an overview for my latest map, Holmstock. Almost 3 months ago, I was asked by Canadian Moose if I could create a map for a group of detail-focused creators that were planning on starting a collab series. Now, I don't take commissions, and I've never made a map specifically for someone else, but this opportunity was too interesting to turn down. The lineup of creators that will be part of this series will be announced by Pekana in episode 1. This is more like a pilot episode. I'll talk a bit about how Pekana will kick off the series later in this video. After episode 1, the next creator will build on that save file, just like other collab series. The plan is to share the save files and mod list so you can check out the builds. Since the map is now published, you can play along and share your builds with us. Before we move on, I want to say that I'm a fan of all of these creators, and I'm deeply honored to be chosen to work with such a talented group of people. This was my most ambitious map yet, and I'm excited to show you around. So, let's get into it. At its core, this is a Nordic archipelago with a boreal environment. The name of the map, Holmstock, is a reference to the significant influence from Stockholm. I know it's super original, but it'll make more sense soon. When talking with the collective about what they wanted in the map, we decided on an island or group of islands with similar topography to Stockholm and mountains in the backdrop. Now, I don't expect everyone to love how I achieved this, but I'm honestly pretty happy with the final result. I think it will provide a really interesting place to build, and I'm excited to see what the collective does with it. Since most of my previous maps are fairly faithful to their original height maps, I was a bit outside my comfort zone, so I reached out to Teddy Radko for some help. He was super helpful, and with his input, I felt better about working on this crazy Nordic map. Thanks, Teddy. So I acquired a height map for Stockholm and mirrored it before importing it to the editor. So you're looking at a backwards version of Stockholm, hence the name, Holmstock. Super creative, I know. It wasn't the best height map data, but it was fine considering how much terraforming I was going to do with it. Considering all the waterways through the area, it would not be a single island, but rather a group of islands, which feels appropriate considering this is for a collaboration. In order to turn this into an archipelago, I removed most of the land near the border of the map, following highways and natural boundaries while trying to create an interesting coastline. Deciding what to keep and what to remove and how the coastline would look was probably the most challenging part of this map, until I started working on the bridge. I flattened some large and small areas to make for quick building. I know it doesn't look very natural when turning on the contour lines, but this is for detail builds and they often require flat areas, and I figured this would save them some time. I've also let the collective know that they can terraform however they want and I won't be upset. I encourage it if it makes the build work better. Here you can see I'm creating bumpy hills like the landscape around Stockholm. I was using the mountain brush with low strength at various sizes and angles. I also kept the outline of this real cargo port, which the player can keep or remove. I filled in the lakes where they're located using image overlay. Oh, and there's actually one big Easter egg in the landscape. Let me know in the comments if you think you've spotted it. Outside the buildable area, the world map was created using a height map of the area surrounded by the Andfjorden in Norway. I'm sorry if I butchered that name. I actually originally had a different world map that you may see in a few of the clips, but changed it because I like these mountains a little more. I edited the world map in the editor, removing some land at the boundaries, creating lakes or inlets, and connecting a peninsula to the border of the buildable area for a main outside connection. Speaking of outside connections, let's move on to transportation. The map features outside connections by highway, rail, sea, and air. The islands are connected to the mainland by this bridge at the tip of this peninsula. This is essentially one big cul-de-sac, but that makes it up to the builder to get creative and fix that problem. Because there's only one way in and out by highway, I wanted to make sure it was a robust connection that could potentially handle future traffic demands of a big city. The highway leads into this 8-lane cable-stayed bridge that also supports rail under the deck with enough clearance for a seaway underneath. This was inspired by Teddy Radko's mega modal bridges from Cities Skylines I. I'm really looking to see those come back in Cities Skylines II. That reminds me, there's still something I need to reveal in my San Juan Islands build. Anyways, because the road network on the bridge is not a highway, the speed limit is reduced to 60 kilometers an hour or 35 miles an hour. If you want to adjust it to match the highway, I recommend using the speed limit editor mod. Please note that this bridge was created with Anarchy and Move It to get the rail lines under the bridge deck and build it high enough for the rail line to provide enough clearance for ships. I also used Better Bulldozer to remove the vertical pillars from the rail line. We have to stretch our imagination that this is actually structurally stable enough to support itself. Even though mods were used to create it, they are not map dependencies and it will function in vanilla. However, please keep in mind if you try and adjust anything on the bridge, the vertical pillars will reappear and you will need Better Bulldozer to remove them. If you don't remove the pillars, the highway, rail, and seaway will all function fine. It just won't look as good, in my opinion. The potential for someone to play on this map without mods was another reason that I overbuilt the bridge and provided so many lanes. The highway then splits off into several directions around the island and loops back on itself. I've not provided any infrastructure on any of the other islands, so it's up to the player to expand in those directions as they wish. As I mentioned, there are two-way rail lines underneath the bridge. After reaching the first main island, the rail lines diverge. One travels along the coast and the other goes into a tunnel under the bridge that comes out over a farm, and then further into this inlet that leads into one of the starting areas. Because there are two rail lines, one can provide service for passengers and the other can be for cargo. The seaways are fairly straightforward, with one going under the bridge as previously mentioned and the other wrapping around to the other side of the islands. There are some seaway spurs leading into the harbor areas for future development. The airplane connections are very simple. There are 4 with 1 on each side. As I mentioned earlier, this map is set in a boreal climate, so it's mostly spruces with some deciduous trees sprinkled in. This would be a good time to tell you about a happy little accident along the way. I had finished around 80% of the tree detailing when I realized I had been placing only adult trees, since this is the default with the tree controller mod in the editor. I actually wanted a variety of ages for visual diversity, and so the trees wouldn't all die at once when playing on the map. So I was playing around with the tree controller mod's ability to change existing trees' age. But then disaster struck. I accidentally changed all the trees on the map to spruces. Did you know there's no autosave in the editor? It gives this relaxing activity a bit of an edge. Since I foolishly didn't save before playing around with the tree controller mod, I either had to go back to when I had placed maybe 20% of the trees, or just carry on. I actually quite quickly came to accept that I liked how many spruces there were. So I went back through and added some more deciduous trees to add a little more color and diversity to the forest. Even after such a silly mistake, I'm really happy with how the forest turned out. So please, if you're in the editor, save often and consider tree ages. Okay, moving on, I should mention there are also some places with bushes on hilltops without trees or what might be marshy areas. Since this is a map for detailers, I thought I'd add a few details of my own. The first thing you'll probably notice when coming into the islands via the highway is this farming area along the coast. There's an elevated train over the farms that comes out of the tunnel from under the bridge. The area is fairly simply detailed, and there's an Easter egg here for fans of the Magnolia County series. Moving across the water and up the hills by the lake, there is a simple mine that I made with some boulders and an abandoned mill. This boulder tunnel probably won't render properly without Anarchy, and I'm really hoping it works when I upload it to PDX mods. I recently had an issue on the Holyhead map with boulder detailing vanishing in the published version. Since I'm making this video before the map is published, we'll get to find out together if it really worked or not. Since we've talked about old farms and mines, let's move on to resources. I didn't want to go overboard with resources because of tile upkeep. In case you don't know, tile upkeep can be tweaked with the 529 tiles mod. Forestry is determined by the trees already on the map, but you can create more forestry area by planting trees. The fertile land is evenly distributed in forest clearings around the map. Ore deposits can mostly be found in hills, and there are a few oil deposits in low-lying areas. Groundwater is also pretty abundant on the map, so it should be able to support a decent-sized city without needing to tap into seawater. Just a note that you can use the extra landscaping tools mod to add or remove resources as needed. I considered creating a custom climate for this map since the latest patch of the game claims to have fixed the custom climate bug that was introduced with the previous patch, but I didn't feel like taking any risks on this project. I'll test out the custom climate features on a future unsuspecting map. For this map, I checked with the collective if they had any preferences, and particularly if they didn't want snow in winter. We decided to use the river delta climate since it does get snow, but just not for very long. I'll also show you the wind direction. There used to be a way to edit this in the editor, but unfortunately the option disappeared in a previous update to the game, so you get what you get, and you don't get upset. It seems to work pretty well for where I would put my industrial areas, so I think it's alright. As a great man once said, it wouldn't be a Poplar Ponderosa map without custom map tiles. Now, while I love the compliment embedded in that statement, it sets a precedent for a very tedious and time-consuming task. Anyone who has done this would know what I mean. That being said, I feel custom tiles add an extra element of detail that I just can't resist adding. Even if the Detailers Collective is going to unlock all the tiles from the start. Picana needs to do that for his plans after all. Okay, so let's have a quick look at how the tiles are laid out. I tried to keep most of the tiles close to the same area as the standard square tiles. You can actually see I left most of the original square tiles around the border intact. There wasn't much need to adjust these since it's just water. The shapes of custom tiles were determined mostly by topography. I tried to pull them away from the coast in areas where I thought it was possible someone might place a harbor. And finally, let's take a look at the starting tiles. I separated the 9 starting tiles into several areas and limited them to the first main island, except this one that encourages a bridge location. I chose this spot because this is where there's actually a bridge if I bring up the Stockholm image overlay. The starting areas are a bit bigger than the standard starting area. This should give players a good amount of land to start their city and form a decent economy before needing to buy more tiles and expand. So that's the map. Picana will be taking the map from here and adding the major transportation networks to set up the other builders. I'll add a link to Picana's channel in the description so you can subscribe to him for when the first episode comes out, and I'll share a playlist for the series when it's available. If you want to play on the map, it's available now. Check the description below for a link to PDX mods. Since I'm publishing the map with this video, I haven't seen what anyone else has done with it yet. As I mentioned before, it's an honor to work with such a talented group of people, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they build on this project. Oh, and one last thing. I've been working behind the scenes on another small project that's associated with this collab series. The collective doesn't even know about it, so shh, and stay tuned for more. Again, thank you to the Detailers Collective for asking me to make this map, and a big thanks to anyone who has played on any of my maps. Lastly, thank you so much for watching, and happy building.